Hi everyone. So welcome back again. So today I'm joined by Sagar Parkar. So he's popularly known as the Cricket Slouch on Twitter. A warm welcome to you too. And so today we're going to talk about the recently concluded this India Australia one day series which we had right now. So Australia won it 2-1. So that was a very good performance on their part, and also about the BGT a little bit, and so how it's all looking, shaping up, going into the home World Cup for India in 2023. So let's start. And so first thoughts basically. So like what I followed from this one day series, right? So it was mainly India. Whoever was chasing were a bit comfortable in the beginning, but however in the last game we saw that India could not chase 260 odd or something. So overall, if I may ask you, so what are your overall positives and negatives, from say from an Indian point of view, if you go and look into the series? So we are going without Bumrah, so the bowling without Bumrah, and maybe the also the batting order. Shreyas Iyer is injured. So how do you see overall the batting side of things? Let's begin with the batting side of things. So what are your thoughts on the Indian limited overs batting right now?
I think I've always maintained this view that India does have the batting depth and it does have the strength. A lot of youngsters are there. But the problem India usually has is it has this problem of plenty, where it doesn't know which players to select from. And traditionally, India has gone with conservative approaches to selection. So rather than experiment with some new young players for a bilateral series, especially leading up to a World Cup year where you want to test your bench strength, they continue with the same old tried and tested players. And we saw that in this series as well, that they started off the first ODI with Ishan Kishan. Then Rohit came back into the squad. Rahul they kept in the middle order itself. And just as Rahul did against Bangladesh earlier this year, he sort of anchored the innings in the middle order, especially when India was chasing low totals. But when it comes to setting a score, I don't think Rahul's the right man in that middle order position when you lose a few wickets early on. Likewise, when India was chasing a relatively modest score on a decent pitch in the last ODI in Chennai, again, Rahul's strike rate was much lower. If I'm not mistaken, I think he scored 30 odd from 60 balls or 40 from 60 balls or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 32 from 50 balls. So that's what he scored. Whereas if you look at the rate at which Kohli was going, it was much higher. And even though Rohit Sharma started very well right at the top, so the opening stand was really good. And then I think India just kept losing wickets in the middle. The one thing that I noticed was most of those wickets were not down to balls that were bowled very cleverly. Like, say, for example, mid-start got Surya Kumar Yadav in the first 2 one-dayers with some really good in-swinging deliveries. Like, you really can't do much against those sort of balls first up. But most of the Indian batsers in the third one-day, I think they mistimed their shots. And 2 cases particularly stand out. One was Hardik Pandya's shot, where he just ended up skying the ball. And the other one was Kohli's dismissal as well. And you could see from Kohli's expression that he really didn't expect that ball to sort of stand and just pop up after it pitched. He had expected it to come more onto his bat. And I think that is what undid India's batsmen. I'm not too worried about India's bowling as such, and I know even though Bumrah is not playing, I think we have the bowling depth, especially in India, to take 10 opposition wickets. And we saw that in every single one-day game over here. So first one day, I think Australia was all out. The second one day as well, Australia was all out. Second one day Australia won with 10 wickets to spare. Yeah, but that was partly because India posted a very low score. And I think once you score 117 and you don't even bat for 30 overs, I think it just deflates you completely. So I don't think the bowlers were in the game as much. And then third match as well, Australia was all out again. So it's not like the Indian bowlers are not doing their part. And this has been a criticism for many years, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, or even pretty much the first decade of the 21st century. Most of us always said that whether India is touring or India is playing at home, it's the batsmen that always perform and the bowlers lack. Whereas now, we've got bowlers who are performing consistently and India's top order batsmen are not performing that really well. I mean, we saw that in the Test series too. I think from a one-day series point of view, we still have got time, and I think we can still, as long as they get the selection right, I'm fairly certain that India will be back on its winning ways. But they have to get the selection right. Say for example, if you're going to Everest Base Camp or you're going to Shimla or Darjeeling in winter, and you pack your summer clothes and you forget to take your scarves and jackets, you're not going to have a good time, are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit similar to that. You have to have the right personnel, especially in those sort of conditions. And I think the omission of Sanju Samson is very glaring, because it's not like he did anything wrong. He has always taken the chances and opportunities that have come up, and he has scored at least on par with what the rest of the team has done. It's not like he's substantially underperformed at a very consistent level. But I think, maybe he doesn't have a godfather in the board or selection panel, who knows. But yeah, it's a bit sad to see him being excluded, because he's one person who can bat at the top of the order and can accelerate right from the beginning itself. And he plays very well against seam and pace. So, he can just smash those bowlers. And then, you have Kohli in the middle to marshal around the spinners and just rotate that striker. So he can hold that anchor role. Other than that, I think India's fielding needs to be a little bit on point. One thing that I noticed was the field placings that Smith had when Australia was fielding versus the field placings that India had when they were fielding. And generally a lot of, I won't say catches went begging, but there was no fielder over there when the ball was in the air. And you notice that with that absent gully, then the lack of protection in third man. And, historically, traditionally in cricket, you've always had a fielder next to the square leg umpire. But I think given that the bowlers are bowling a little bit more straighter and at the stumps, most modern day captains don't place that fielder over there. They either place him at mid wicket or like fine leg or deep square. So, like some of those aerial shots, they don't go to hand as such. But I think a big plus point was that Kohli is still making runs, which is good. Shubman Gill is able to at least make 30-40 runs at the top. And it wasn't too long ago when he hit a double 100 as well. So I think it's not a question, like the loss in the third game, I don't think should be taken against India as in India is doing something bad. But I think they just need to use this opportunity to fine-tune their strengths, get their players right, and I think importantly, get their tactics spot on. We saw Kuldeep take 3 wickets on that pitch. And, I think in ODIs, we need to learn how to use the wrist spinners a little bit better, because we saw what Zampa did against India. So, there's something for us to learn from that.
Yeah, so regarding that, so I have 2 questions here. So the first is so when you're talking about selection, so apart from Sanju Samson, so who do you think in a home World Cup year, so who do you think can be a choice in the top 7? And secondly, with Shreyas Iyer out right now, Surya Kumar Yadav is in the side, so he has not performed that well in the ODIs, but he's been a revelation in the T20s. So how do you see his place in the middle order, and what happens to the team structure when, say, Shreyas Iyer is also fit? So how do you arrange the middle order?
Well, I think for starters, probably Surya should be batting below KL Rahul. So if Rahul's there in that middle order, then I think he needs to be batting higher up, and Surya Kumar Yadav comes down. Pandya obviously has his spot over there, and given the team that India have, and given the nature of the batsmen that they have, I think India's ploy should be to take it as deep as they can. So that gives Sky, those 5-6 overs at the end where he can just go completely ballistic. You can't expect him to come in the 20th over and sort of hold an innings together. That is not his role, and I don't think that's his strength. So the emphasis and the onus lies on the top order batsmen, that they make sure that they maintain wickets, but in doing so, they don't play too conservatively that they score at only 4.5 runs and over. I think one of the good things that I noticed in the third ODI was India still scored about 67, 70 runs in the first 10 overs, which was an encouraging sign. Whereas normally we're used to seeing only about 45, 50 runs being scored in the first 10. Other than Samson's omission, I think there has been a clamor for, looking at Prithvi Shaw in the side as well. Now, obviously, there are non-cricketing issues at play over here, especially rumored to be around discipline and things that he has done off the field, which have kept him out of the squad. And that obviously is a coach's and captain's decision as to whether or not he should be part of India's plans or not. But what I would like to see is the team looking at the World Cup in October, telling themselves, we've got 7 months left. Let's identify our 15 main players. Let's get our batting order right. And just as we saw with what England did in Bangladesh, where they rejigged their batting order so that they had players trying out different positions, even if they lost, as long as they get the data, the information that they need to identify who's suitable at what position and can switch their tactics on the fly, that probably should work for India as well. Knowing our team, I'm fairly certain they'll stick with the order that we have now. And let's face it, it's not a bad order, right? We know that Rohit blows hot and cold. He'll have a magnificent innings, and then a couple of innings, he'll probably get out cheaply, but then he comes back again. Like I said earlier, I think this loss was just, a loss in a competitive game on a very sporting pitch. So I don't think we should read too much into it as to India's woeful performances. But it does concern me that, for 3 games now, or 2 games in succession, India has lost 10 wickets before the allocated quota of overs has been full. And I think they have struggled against spin on some tricky pitches. I don't think the same pitches will be in play once the World Cup comes. I think they'll probably favor the batters a little bit more, and we might see a completely different performance then. Shardul Thakur is another person that India can look at, just to shore up that middle order. But I don't think, he is good enough to bowl 10 economical overs in a game. Hardik Pandya obviously is doing great, and there's a very, very heavy reliance on him to perform not only with bat but also with ball. And I think India need to be very mindful of the sort of pressure they put on him, because his role needs to be utilized very carefully, and I think he shouldn't be the 5th bowler who bowls all 10 overs, but maybe he can share that workload with somebody else and just bowl the crucial middle overs where he can get a few important breakthroughs. Yeah, but other than that, I think the batting cupboard is a little bit bare, isn't it? Yeah. Have you got anyone in mind who you think could fill that void?
Not really in mind. So I'm happy with the side squad we have currently. So maybe, Sanju Samson, even I feel like he has a very good record in limited one days he has played so far as well. And so apart from that, what I feel is, an interesting thought about KL Rahul is that, so whenever I see him bat in tests, he's having a bad time, that's fine. But whenever I see him say bat in one days in the middle order, right? So I feel he's a very good player when it comes to chasing, like maybe in the 220 kind of a score. He's a very good person to chase down those kind of scores. But somehow I feel that I don't know if he has we all know he has the game because he smashes it in IPL, but I don't know if he has the game to actually take to maybe say go from say a 50 for 2 from 2 or 50 for 3 to say chase down a 300 score. So I'm not sure if he has that kind of a game. So what are your thoughts on say the number 4 spot for India? So do you see anybody apart from KL Rahul over there? You're happy going forward with him?
See, ideally I would have liked a fit Shreyas over there. And I think Pant's injury has also made things a little bit tricky for India. So Pant's injury is what has actually brought KL into the side. And, because he's keeping and he's taking up a batsman's position. Now, let's say, for example, if Ishan Kishan was still in form and he was still making runs, Ishan Kishan could have opened with Rohit, Shubman Gill comes at maybe 3 or 4, and Rohit comes at 4 or 3, depending on how they swap, right? Then at number 5, you would have had KL probably. At 6, you would have had Sky, and then you've got Hardik, or actually probably Hardik above Sky, and then you've got the bowlers to follow. So effectively, what we're looking at that position is a keeper batsman. So let's look at which keeper batsmen India have who can play the shorter format of the game. And the first name that comes to mind, especially after Pant, is Sanju Samson. Yeah. Right? I don't think there's anyone else who's able to perform at that international level as consistently with both the bat and keep wickets effectively as well. So I think that is an issue that India has at the moment. I'd be more than happy to hear anyone else's thoughts on any other replacement keeper batsman. But I think for now we've got Ishan Kishan, KL, Sanju Samson, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So even I feel the same, like Sanju Samson deserves a chance as well. So, but however, so if we shift our thoughts to the bowling department, so bowling looks all right. I feel even without Bumrah, I don't know if Bumrah will be back for the World Cup. So let's see, fingers crossed for that. But even
I don't think he should be. Yeah, I don't think he should be rushed back in. I think he should have his time, recover properly, go through rehab, and be fully fit before he comes back. And I suppose with Bumrah, India could do what England are doing with James Anderson, just manage his workload better so that he plays the crucial games, gets sufficient rest, so that way, they manage his injuries much more effectively.
Yeah, so even without Bumrah, if you look at the bowling, we have Siraj. I think Siraj is the number 1 ODI bowler or somewhere around that, if I'm not wrong right now. And
no, I don't go much for rankings, but if you look at Siraj's performance, especially in the last 12 months in white ball games, not only has he bowled quick and with good amount of control, but he's also got India the crucial breakthrough in the power play overs, and that is a significant factor over there. Like, do you remember the days when Srinath and Prasad used to bowl the power play overs?
Right. So
we would hardly get a wicket. Hardly we would get a wicket.
Yeah. I've actually skipped that part of, because I was born around that time, so I have not watched that.
Look, there are some games on YouTube. Watch it if you can. I think it was later on when Zahir came into the frame, and Zahir and then Irfan as well to a certain extent, where we thought, okay, now we have got some bowlers capable of getting those early breakthroughs. Otherwise, it was just, the usual, okay, we'll rely on Kumble to get us the wickets and control the flow of runs. So this time around, India actually has a good bowling attack. And it wouldn't surprise me if India is still looking at two spinners in the side. So Akshar and Jadeja are pretty much favorites to go through, maybe even at the expense of Ashwin, because in white ball cricket their batting is a plus point over Ashwin's batting. I'm not saying Ashwin is a poor batsman, but these guys are capable of hitting the big ones.
Yeah, so this is about India. So let's talk about some other teams right now. So let's start off with Australia only. So I think Steve Smith is a born leader. So I think his tactics were spot on, and and also so overall the Australian side looks good. So overall, if I may ask you, from the contenders we have in this World Cup, so which team do you think maybe we can look forward to, maybe as the favorites or something? So what are your thoughts about the teams which can actually go all the way this
Look, it's a bit too early to call favorites, because there are some teams that don't peak pretty much closer to the tournament, and there are teams who have sort of peaked a few months earlier, and then as they get into the business end of the tournament, I think fatigue or something catches up with them. Nonetheless, I mean, if you look at the overall pool of players, you have to say England will be one of the 4 that could reach the semis. And I think if Australia continue with their squad that they have now, so opening with Mitch Marsh, say Travis Head, for example, I'm not sure if Warner will continue after the Ashes. I suspect he will either declare retirement or he might be dropped, depending on what his form is like. But Australia do have some exciting white ball players in their ranks. And, if, say, Warner retires, that they could call someone up from the T20 squad. They could call up somebody like Josh Phillippe, for example. Right? And these guys could have a go. And, I wouldn't rule out Australia. definitely wouldn't rule out Australia because they've got the slow bowlers to take advantage of the Indian wickets as well, and they've got the quicks who can bowl consistently as well. And I think the big call for them would be around captaincy, because we saw what a difference it was between Smith and what's his name, Pat Cummins. Yeah. So I know these things can't be quantified, and we don't yet have a reliable measure of analysis to adjudicate who's the better captain. But sometimes you just see it not only in the results, but in the minor things like the bowling changes, the field placings, the general tempo of the game, morale of the fielders, players as such. So you never know. India obviously would make the third team out of the four, and I don't know, the fourth team would be a bit of a suspense. South Africa is resurgent at the moment, so they might make that fourth team. New Zealand could surprise everybody again and just make it, because they're always these dark horses kind of entity. Pakistan, if they play well on their day, they could get in. You never know.
Yeah.
So I think that fourth team, it will be a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, same thoughts here. So the top three, India, England, and Australia, looks more or less set, unless any upsets or something like that happen. But the fourth team will be a bit of a mystery. So, however, so the World Cup is far away. So even we have to see what are the conditions. It's in winter this time, around October, November in India. I think that's the area. So we have to see how the conditions are at that time, the dew factor and all these things. Many things come into the picture over that. So that's a different ball game altogether. So we will talk about that as we come closer to the World Cup. But so let's shift our focus to this. In the test series which happened between India and Australia. So we saw the first two test matches India dominated, won comfortably. People were talking about a 4-0 whitewash, but then Australia fought back really well. There were some dodgy pitches as well in Indore and something like that. But so overall, looking at the 2-1 score line, so we have this right now, I think 4 consecutive 2-1s which have been won by India in the BGP.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts overall on this test series? Did you enjoy it? So yeah.
This one not so much. I think the previous one that was held not only in Australia but the one in India, I think they were more closely fought test matches. This one was a bit underwhelming, partly because I think Australia just didn't turn up for the test match. They saw that weird little Tetris pitch in Nagpur and just decided, we've got 5 left-handers. This ball is going to turn massively from outside the off. And for some weird reason, everybody just wanted to sweep and reverse sweep, and I think they just lost it over them. Second test match was a little bit more closer, because if you notice, Australia actually had the upper hand on a few occasions in the game. India had the upper hand on, after a couple of sessions, especially that partnership between Jadeja and Akshar. And then Australia came in for the third innings, and I think they were 70-something for no loss, and they just lost 10 wickets for about 30-40 runs. Again, mostly due to
sweeping.
Really, some injudicious shots. It wasn't as if the ball was doing much, and because it's a Delhi pitch, that ball always tends to stay low, and it's a relatively slower track. And I think they just couldn't adjust to it. The spinners weren't I think apart from Lyon, they really didn't know. I wouldn't say they were too bad. It was just that if it wasn't for Akshar and Jadeja's partnership, I think it would have been a much more even contest than eventually it turned out to be. Third pitch at Indore was an absolute farce, and I think it was probably underprepared because maybe the guys at Indore didn't know until 2 or 3 weeks before the match started that they were supposed to host a game. And, like I mentioned on my podcast recently, Indore is not your standard cricketing center in India. They don't host a lot of first-class matches either. You go to Delhi, you go to Mumbai, you go to Chennai, you go to Kolkata. There are always games going on. You'll have your first-class games, you'll have your Ranji Trophy games, your Duleep Trophy games, your SMAT games. So, and they have the better groundsmen as well. So they prepare better pitches overall. And I think India could have managed that scenario a little bit better. Now, that takes me back to when India have prepared very ranked turners like this, like really poor pitches where the ball just turns absolute square from the first day. And India have lost some of those games in equally shameful manner. The earlier one that comes to my mind was when England was visiting, I think it was 2012 or something like that, or maybe 2014. I can't remember the year exactly. 2012? Yeah. So that was when Graeme Swann and Monty Panesar just steamrolled us, and Peterson scored that brilliant counter-attacking 100. Then the other game was at Pune when Australia was visiting. I think it was 2017 or 18, something like that. And again, that one India lost, and this one. So India doesn't need to have these sort of pitches, and because there was a time when India needed assistance from the pitch, because your main wicket-taking bowlers were one or two spinners, like Kumble and Harbhajan, for example, and the fast bowlers really didn't do much. But now India has fast bowlers who use the new ball effectively. They use reverse swing effectively when the ball gets older. They're constantly attacking the stumps, rather than looking for that away swing. And, they do get us wickets. I mean, Umesh bowled beautifully in the game that he played in. Shami did really well in that third or second test match. Siraj got a good few wickets too. Yeah, so I think India has got a relatively balanced attack. And if you look at the last test match as well, even though the pitch was actually good for batting and Australia scored 400, I think India did well to restrict them to 400 and something, because then when India batted, India scored almost 600 runs.
Right, yeah. So that is about the test series only. So I think I'm using a free version of Zoom, so I'm actually running out of time. It's telling me some 7 minutes are left or whatever.
10 minutes left. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 minutes. Yeah. So anyways, let's say the last thing we can discuss about is the World Test Championship, right? So it will be between India and Australia only at Oval. So Oval.
At the Oval, yeah.
Normally the pitch, as they say in England, is a bit flat, but given it's in June, it's an early kind of a rainy kind of a season maybe.
Yeah. So there will be overcast conditions.
Yeah. So are you like thinking it will be something like the India New Zealand final or something else or something like that? Yeah.
I hope it's not like the India New Zealand final, because India New Zealand final, that saw an unusual amount of rain leading up to the test match, and we saw a good day and a half washed out. And I think despite that forecast, despite the presence of the rain, despite the first day being washed out, which meant your toss was delayed and you didn't have to name your squad until the toss, India still made the mistake of choosing two spinners, and I don't know what possessed them to do that. And then in the return leg, when India played against England after that, they continuously left out Ashwin and selected Jadeja, even though you kind of can argue that Ashwin is a better spinner, whether it's home conditions or overseas. But I think India wanted that extra batter because they knew that their top order and middle order is not as strong as what it used to be. And I suspect that this time around we'll see something similar. I think Shardul Thakur might make it into the squad just because, they probably see him as a fifth bowling option or even a sixth bowling option who can sort of shore up the batting if need be. And, we do talk about Oval being a batting friendly pitch, but Oval does tend to assist spin usually around day 4 or so and later. Nonetheless, as you mentioned, because it's early June, generally we are seeing the season shift. So whereas June used to be warm and relatively drier, now we are seeing more wetter Junes and Julys, and then we are seeing the heat a little bit later. So it could be that there might be some moisture in the air. We don't know, but I think India need to be very mindful of those conditions and select their squad of 13 or 15 accordingly, and just be flexible to make it. I suspect, we'll have Rohit and Shubman Gill opening. I think Pujara will definitely play at 3, Kohli at 4. 5 remains a key issue. So, there's no point getting somebody like Sarfaraz Khan just for this one particular match without him having any exposure to English conditions. So, we don't know who will take up that spot. Given that Hanuma Vihari hasn't been in the team for a while, I don't think he will make it to number 5. Shreyas Iyer, if he returns from injury, he's the most likely candidate to take up that spot. And then 6, I think, as usual, you'll have probably Jadeja or Shardul, depending on whoever is the preferred all-rounder. 7 will be Bharat, and then you'll have your 3 quicks, which would most likely be Shami, Siraj, and if Bumrah is not fit, you could get, maybe Umesh might get a look in. And then you could get Ashwin as one of the other 4 bowlers. So that way, India will have 5 bowlers.
One more bowler, like I'm actually interested, especially in English conditions, is Jaydev Unadkat. I feel that can be a left arm option, can be something, because he has been doing it in the Ranji Trophy day in day out. So he knows, he basically is a very good swing bowler as well. So on his particular day, so let's see how it goes. So it's still
I mean, he is a possibility, and I will admit I'm not the biggest Unadkat fan around. Given his years of profligate bowling and leaking runs early on. But the Bangladesh series that India played, Unadkat actually bowled really well in that, and I was really impressed with the consistency that he had with his lines, with his lengths, and sort of just the ability to unsettle batsmen a little bit. So yeah, he definitely is a possibility. I think the other thing to keep in mind is Arshdeep Singh has recently got a contract with one of the counties.
Right.
So, if he gets a few early games in and he does really well, I think India should have an open mind about handing him a test debut. Because you never know when that sort of performance comes in handy. And like you said, he's a left-arm swing bowler and can easily come in really handy.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Arshdeep Singh is also a player to watch out for. So let's wrap it up with this. So it was nice chatting with you, and so we should again.
My pleasure.
Yeah, we should again do it sometime in some later series.
Yeah.
Maybe sometime in the IPL. Do you watch the IPL?
I just follow the scores because there's too many games to catch up on, and by the time the matches start in India, it's bedtime in Australia over here. So I don't often get to watch a lot of games, but the first thing I do is I'll wake up, I'll check the scores, just see who won and who did well and what the issues were. So IPL probably may not be a good thing for me to discuss because I don't know the ins and outs of it that well. But yeah, any international series, any other stuff like that, I definitely keep an eye out on. If I can, I'll watch it live. If not, I'll catch up on highlights. If not, I'll catch up on commentary, just see what's going on. So that is where a big interest of mine lies. League cricket goes on, and there's so much league cricket at the moment. You basically risk getting fatigued out of cricket, and I don't want to lose my love for the sport just because of too much franchise cricket.
Yeah, that's something like many cricket writers as well struggle with nowadays. Too many cricket and everything.
I know it's too much. Yeah, it's too much to keep track of. Yeah, which is not a bad thing, because I think it just shows that the sport is growing, and we definitely need to help the sport grow to various corners of the earth. But sometimes it comes at a price. So we need more journalists. We need more proper people who can cover the sport very well.
Yeah. So this was it. So hopefully you all enjoyed watching this conversation as well. Like, got some value out of it. I'm also interested to hear what you guys think about maybe the Indian squad leading up to the World Cup. Any changes you want to see in the playing 11 or in the squad? You want some players like Sanju Samson, whatever. So thank you for whoever joined in, listen to this. And again, I will come back shortly with the IPL with some thoughts and all these things. So thank you as well, the Cricketing Slouch, for joining. Bye.
Thank you, Saptak. Take care. Bye.